always talk about open the qua, open the qua, open the qua. What does that really, really mean? How do you open the qua? Okay, how do you open the hip joint? You know, it's sort of, but not the same as opening your shoulder. Your shoulder also has a qua, okay, but the shoulder has a lot more mobility that it can do things that we can control. The hip doesn't have as many. But the concept is the same, that you're moving to open the space inside the joint. That's what you're trying to do. Okay, so how do we do that? All right, let's look at it from an anatomical or physical view. You have your hip bones, okay? Now, we always talk about sink the tailbone down, sink the tailbone down. What happens when you sink the tailbone down? Well, it pulls the hips down. But if you can think of the hips as having a back and a front, okay? If you imagine the hips like this, when you sink the tailbone, it goes up like this, which means that the hip in the front goes up a little bit, okay? So when you dip this down, this slightly moves up. At the same time, your leg, your thigh is going down because you release the hamstrings. So as it's going down, tailbone goes down, but the front of the hip is actually tilting up, going a little bit up, okay? That creates a space inside the joint, inside here, okay? That's what you want. You want that space. If I exaggerate it, see, if I do this, see, it's like many people know that in exercise, in exercise theory, you have something called a crunch. Okay, you do a crunch. What's a crunch? Okay, a crunch is when you pull your stomach in, and you kind of compress your body to strengthen your core muscles. We do something similar, but without tensing the muscles. We do it more from the hips. So the hips are going down, the front goes in because the hip bone is rotating. When I first learned Tai Chi, we were taught, this is before I met Master Ting, we were actually taught to do this, to tip, to make our hips do this. When I met Master Ting, he said, no, don't do that. Because when you do that, you're tensing your muscles. He said, let it happen naturally. Okay, let it be natural. So in other words, when you drop your tailbone, you're not tensing your muscles. You're just dropping, you're relaxed, but you're creating the same thing. You're pulling your abdomen in, your hip is rotating in like this. So the front of the hip rotates a little bit up because the back is going down, creating a space inside the hip. That is the technical way to look at how we open the qua, okay? Any questions so far? Okay. An easy way to think of it is, we've talked about for a while now, is to catch the baby. Because when you catch the baby, that's exactly what you're doing. What are you doing? See, tailbone goes under you, goes down. Top of the hip goes up, creating a space inside. Okay? So catch the baby. Another way to think of it is skiing. For people who ski, or if you watch the Winter Olympics, right? Except much simpler than that. Okay, skiing, when you see somebody and they're serious skiers, their posture, they're like this, right? They're sitting back, hip down. See, this goes under. You don't see anybody skiing like this. No balance, no rooting, okay? Because in skiing, you want to feel the snow, okay? So you adjust, you move with the snow. So this, sitting down here, just like in skiing. Now, if it's a steep hill or you're a racer, you're like this. And of course, we don't do that. We're more like this, okay? But the concept is the same. You can start this way. Really what you're doing is you're pushing your hips back and sinking your tailbone down. See? So you have that. So if you're looking to understand how to open your quad, how to sit, think about skiing. Okay? Like this. That's the posture for skiing. So, quads open. You cannot ski with your quads closed. Not seriously, okay? Not going down a mountain. So that's another example of how we open the quads, okay?